Diane, Mark, Judy, Peter, hi. Nice to see you guys. Let's see who else is coming on. Oh, good. We've got a good group. Bruce and Elaine. Oh, Teng is here. Good. Okay.
Oh, he's arrived. Good.
Deanne, hi.
Hi. Hey, Linda.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think David Thomas, if he's not on, will be joining us
Okay.
from Boston.
Yep.
But he sent me an email about that, a second friend of his, Tu Yen.
Yes.
And I didn't see it in time to forward it to you, her email address. So I'm just sick. I just found out.
I thought she signed in. I thought she signed in.
She did sign up.
She signed in. All right. Well, we should get.
Is she on? Did Travis? Travis, were you able to get her?
She's not on, but she did register. Yes.
Oh, she did register. Okay.
Yeah.
So, hi everyone. We want to get started on time. I'm Linda DeWolf, one of the co-founders of GoPhil, and such a warm welcome to each and every one of you. There's quite a few old, not old in age necessarily, but old friends.
Careful.
Careful.
I'm old.
Some new folks joining us, which we're thrilled about. Some GoPhil staff, some GoPhil volunteers, and also some GoPhil board members, Peter Banwell, and I don't know if Helena's on yet, but Helena Reep is a board member.
Elena won't be able to join us this evening.
Okay. All right. So if we could, we're just going to do a virtual wave, and then we're going to have to turn our sounds off. So because of so many people. So hello, everyone. Hello.
Hi.
So hi, Maydeen. So if you will go down to the bottom of your screen, I'm going to share with you things you know about Zoom because you probably use it every day of your life now.
Yes.
We ask you first to stop your video because we'll have more bandwidth. We have a lot of people from a lot of countries on the call, so it'll be better to just down below it says stop video, and you'll just hit that and it'll stop your picture. We are going to be recording this, so we would ask you to also turn your mute button on. That's at the bottom of the screen too. If you're not a speaker, turn your mute off. That will avoid some of the background noise that we'd have otherwise. So we appreciate that very much. So this is how we'll do it then. We want to have this conversational and have some opportunity to hear your questions and discussion. We've got a lot to cover today, 2 partners in Vietnam and 1 in Laos. So if you have questions, if you open your chat button, which is again at the bottom of the screen, just click it, then you'll see on the right side a panel will show up, and that's where you can type questions. If we have time for them, we'll get to them. If not, I promise we'll get back to you on your particular question. So that's all the Zoom information I have for you. So thank you. This is our 5th GoPhil virtual Zoom with our partner programs, sharing what's going on with them during the pandemic. And we're thrilled to have partners from Vietnam and from Laos, as I mentioned. We've already covered Guatemala, India, Nepal, and Cambodia. And we'll be starting another round with some additional partners in the next couple of weeks. So we're excited about that and thrilled to have our partners from Southeast Asia with us tonight. Tonight for me, tomorrow morning for some of you in Southeast Asia, and for Peter in the UK, it's 1:30 in the morning. So all kinds of time zones here. So let me just say a little bit about GoPhil because we have actually 3 or 4 new folks on our program who haven't been with us before. So just real quickly, we're going into our 10th year. We are really a foundation that collaborates with grassroots programs around the world in 7 countries, working with communities to ensure that those communities get the rights they deserve in health, education, and human rights. So we adopt pretty much a community-focused model, believing communities know their issues and know how to address their problems, so we don't try to come in with a serve and solve model to tell them what to do. So it's a different kind of model. It's very much listen and learn. And it's very equity based as well. So let me just say to conclude with that, this pandemic is tough on all of us. And again, we appreciate you all joining when there's a lot going on in everybody's lives now, but it's especially challenging for our partners who really work with some of the most vulnerable of vulnerable. And where they've had schools or healthcare services or whatever, they've typically had to stop that, not change their direction, but refocus their direction around basic human needs, food, water, health, safety, things like that. We know, however, those are the immediate needs, and there'll be longer term issues that will come along, and we'll talk some about that too. I think actually one of our guests, Blue Dragon, can talk very well to that. Our program director, Emily Bill, is not with us this evening because it's 1:30 in the morning for her too. And so we miss her, but she talks with our programs almost daily. And I know the Southeast Asia programs particularly have had a lot of Zoom calls to discuss what's going on in their areas. So I want to say early on with GoPhil, we created a framework for working around this pandemic and created a rapid response fund that helped us to make careful decisions about how donations were issued. And we've raised, thanks to your very generous donations, over 130,000 at this point. Hi, Denise, you can just turn off your video if you will. Hi, and your mute as well. And then, so we created the rapid response framework, and we also signed a Council on Foundations pledge that we would do everything in our power to make it as simple as possible for our program partners to receive the funds that are so generously given. So thus far, we've been able to issue 18 different grants to programs, and we're pretty thrilled about that because some have been issued in a day or two. So we're thrilled that we're able to do that, again, thanks to your generosity. So I think let's hear from our programs and what they're up to. We have about 10 minutes per program. We'll have an overview, and again, put your questions on the side. Teng says he could not hear, but maybe he's come back in now. So if you have questions, pose those. And if we get a little behind schedule, I'm going to give a little sign that we've agreed that that's okay with all the speakers, so we get through all the presentations. So we're going to start with Children's Education Foundation, CEF, in Hoi An, Vietnam. Hoi An is a tourist community, been hard hit by the pandemic. CEF, we've been partners with them. They're one of our earliest partners since 2011. And they focus on helping girls overcome issues related to poverty by breaking that cycle through education. CEF provides sponsorships and scholarships, also support through food, medicine, bikes, getting to school, etc., and education and mentoring, which they've had to put on hold for a bit because of all that's going on. So our guest is Linda Byrne, who's the founder and director and good friend of mine, ours. Linda, I wanted to pose two things. One is Vietnam has been touted as one of the countries that's done the best job around handling the pandemic. So I'd be curious what you think about that. And then how specifically the pandemic has impacted CEF and your community and girls and the family. So we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Linda.
Sure.
And hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Yep.
Good. So I'm mainly going to talk about the impact in Quang Nam because that's where we've got 191 students. So I think everyone knows that in Vietnam, there have been no deaths at all, which is quite amazing. Vietnam has treated the pandemic very responsibly, and everyone's very impressed here. We had 3 cases in Quang Nam and they've recovered. No children or families of CEF were affected. The impact on our programs, though, was quite dramatic. Obviously, we couldn't see the students, we couldn't make payments, we couldn't do workshops. We could only be in touch by phone or Facebook or email. So as time was running on and we were meant to have done many things, we decided we do a lot of our updates for the term by phone or Facebook. Now that the regulations have changed here, we can see our students if there's only a few at a time. So we're using the rest of the term to do home visits, but we can only do about a quarter of them, and the rest are done by phone or by Facebook. We can't do workshops yet because there's still regulations about the number of people who meet in one place at one time. Now, we're very lucky. All our kids have gone back to school. Our scholarship students who are ethnic, they're all back at school, and our sponsorship students, they're all back at school too. So we're waiting for the regulations to change so we can run our budgeting workshop, our human trafficking talks, our water safety day, and our girls to women workshops and career advice as well. So we were meant to make payments to our students 2 months ago, and we've started to do that. We did some last weekend, and instead of it just taking an hour per district, it took all day because we could only see a few students at a time with their parents or their guardians. So we've done some of them, and this coming weekend, we're doing the rest of the payments. As I said, our workshops we can't do until the regulations change and a lot of people can come together at one time.
Thanks.
The impact on the community, well, a lot of, as you can imagine, a lot of people have lost work. So we're lucky though that a lot of our families are farming families, and you know the work they do is growing rice and vegetables, and they can continue doing that. So that hasn't impacted them. So we're actually, out of our 204 families, only 43 of them needed help. And that's the situation at present. And at the end of July, when we finish giving COVID support to them, then we will check in with them and all our other families to see if anyone needs further COVID support. We suspect this is the unemployment situation for many is not going to end quickly. So we imagine giving support for another 3 months after that. But we may be wrong, it may be longer, but we hope not. So GoPhil gave us $1,000 for COVID support, and we were able to support 4 families for 3 months with that, which is wonderful. And we also had some other funds, and we supported 3 more GoPhil children for 3 months with other funds we had as well. So 7 out of the 19 families that GoPhil helps us are receiving support. I think basically that's all I need to say, because that gives you an idea of what it's like here. You know, the unemployment of families is for different reasons. A lot of them were in hospitality in some way or another, and Hoi An and around Hoi An, this area is a tourist destination. So anyone involved in tourism is unemployed and may be unemployed for another 3 months or 6 months. It's hard to know. But there is domestic tourism, which has meant a few places have opened up. The town is a little bit like a ghost town. There's hardly any shops open. There's hardly any restaurants open. And they're catering to the local Vietnamese tourist. But there's so few places open that not many people are employed. So when tourism resumes, then a lot of people will be able to find work. When factories have enough orders, international orders, they'll be able to resume. Some factories have taken on some of their old staff, but you know, they're on low salaries, usually around 50%, 40% of their old salaries, and they haven't got much work. So that's also probably going to take a while to come back to normal. That'll probably depend on things being good overseas in many countries that order products from Vietnam. But I think that's probably all I need to say.
Okay. Linda, I wonder, we may have another question or so, but I'm wondering if there are any of the girls in the sponsorship program you're aware of who've dropped out of school. Your schools have started again, and I just wonder if any ended up staying home to help their families in rice fields or fish hatcheries or whatever.
No, all our students are back at school. Our scholarship students who are ethnic, they're back at school, and our sponsorship students, they're all back at school as well.
Okay. Question from your good friends Elaine and Bruce. They're wondering if any of the girls were able to keep, if the girls were able to keep up with their studies while they were out of school?
Well, our biggest worry is that a lot of our kids are actually going to fail this year because they've missed so much school. And it depended on the age of the student. Some were meant to do studies on TV, and not all our students have got a TV. I know TVs aren't expensive in Vietnam, but some families don't have one. So some of them had to walk to someone they knew or cycle to someone they knew and try and catch the lessons on TV at their home. The ones that needed computers, we tried to get computers to the students who needed a computer to do lessons online if they didn't have one. Some of them were sharing computers. Some of them had terrible reception. So they would get parts of lessons and then the reception would drop out. And basically now, due to social distancing, schools are back at school 5 days a week or 6 days a week. Now, some of them are back at school 7 days a week. And the hours vary. Some of our students are only doing half a day because of the social distancing. So they've got classes, but very few in a class. And obviously the teachers have got limited hours. So that means that the students aren't getting, the teachers are trying to give them enough lessons, but it's very hard for them. So we can see when we talk to each of our students, some of them are maybe getting 10 hours of schooling a week, some are getting 15 hours of schooling a week. You know, it varies, but no one is getting their normal school hours, even though school is in attendance generally 7 days a week. So we're hoping, I don't know what will happen, but we're hoping that they will make the pass mark lower considering the circumstances, because we definitely have students who weren't able to keep up with their studies during the social distancing and shut schools period of time.
Yeah, well, that's worrisome for sure. I think we'll move on to Blue Dragon. Thank you, Linda. And if you have questions, again, just put them on the chat screen and we can round back around or send them to Linda and get responses. So thanks so much. It's interesting. Our second program that we're highlighting, partner, is Blue Dragon. They're one of our newer partners. We just started working with them in 2017. Our guests are Michael Brosowski, who is the founder of Blue Dragon, and Caitlin Wyndham, who's the resource and partnership leader. They're going to be talking some about their program, which is really interesting as it provides response and preventative services to people in the Vietnam area, that Hanoi and Northern Vietnam, who are very much in need, including street children and those with disabilities. And they do, much of their work is around the rescue of human trafficking victims. They have a drop-in center, a crisis outreach, social work program, education, shelters, legal support. It's kind of the full comprehensive services. And something interesting I think about Blue Dragon is they're a good example of where they're still providing some of this immediate need kind of service of food, et cetera, and looking at some of the long-term economic impact that's already occurring, and then especially as the borders are opening up and some of that impact. So Michael and Caitlin, welcome, and love to hear a bit about what's happening with you and your communities.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. So I'll jump in, but Michael can also help me to handle questions, because obviously as the founder, he's got a lot more of the background and history. A little bit about me, because I think most of you don't know me. I moved to Vietnam in 2001, actually exactly 19 years ago this week, and I've been working with various NGOs here. And also with Blue Dragon since it started. So I've been associated with Blue Dragon since the very beginning, met Michael early on and have been around as a volunteer and consultant. And I've been on staff full-time in this role for 4 years. So yeah, it's really great to join you guys and be able to have a bit more of an interactive conversation with some of you. So as Linda said, Blue Dragon is focused on two key issues. One is street children in Hanoi, and ensuring that street children can ideally get off the streets, but if not that, access all the services that they require and be safe. We try where possible to reunite kids with their families, and if not, we provide services so that they are safe and healthy and can return to school. And the other main part of our work now is human trafficking. So we're trying to end human trafficking from Vietnam, and that problem is increasing, unfortunately. But the big issue that we're facing at the moment, and the one that's really been affected by the pandemic and the economic impacts, is the trafficking of women and girls into China. And primarily that's the girls are being tricked into crossing the border, and then they're put into forced marriages in China. So many of you will know China had a one-child policy for many years, and so there's a shortage of women. So this is a very big problem where men are trying to find wives from wherever they can. So in terms of the pandemic, as Linda said, we provided a lot of emergency support initially. In March and April, there was a lot of need for basic food and accommodation, rent support for families on the street. And also for many of the survivors of human trafficking that already returned to Vietnam. Many of them lost their jobs. They also work in tourism, hospitality, factories and retail, and so all of those jobs disappeared. So we've been providing that emergency support, and we are continuing to provide that as well now. Less families need that now, but still many families do. As Linda Byrne and CEF mentioned, many of the families we're working with are also ethnic minority. So we have 2 programs up on the Chinese border, and with the schools closed for 3 months, that put a huge strain on these very poor families because the children were out of school. Normally the children are at boarding schools. So normally they get all their food and all their care at the school. But families were then faced with 3 extra months of food needing to feed their children. And for many families, that was just impossible. They don't have an extra 3 months of food. So we supplied a lot of emergency food to families in the mountainous areas and ethnic minority people. We collaborated with the government to do that. So over the crisis period, rescues were very difficult. So we actually work with the authorities to rescue victims of trafficking in China, and also to help bring them back to Vietnam. We provide a whole range of services when they return also, so that they can, rebuild their lives, overcome trauma, and get back to work and school and whatever they need. But during the crisis, that work was really difficult because of the travel restrictions and because the border was closed. It was very, very difficult for us to rescue victims. And we had a lot of victims that were needing rescue, around over 30 between February and now. And it was very, very stressful for our team, because the team just had to keep telling them, sorry, you have to just wait. We can't do anything at the moment, because there was the travel restrictions. So that was extremely difficult for those survivors, many of whom were in very abusive relationships, were locked at home with violent partners, or everyone's been talking about how domestic violence and child abuse are increasing over the lockdown period, and you can imagine if there's already a problematic relationship and you're in a forced marriage, and then suddenly everyone's locked in at home, that was really a very big problem. Thankfully, things are now loosening up a little bit. Travel restrictions are loosening both in China and in Vietnam, so we're now seeing an uptick in rescues, which is great. And one kind of silver lining, I guess, is that because of the pandemic, the Chinese side have been increasing surveillance on their side of the border, and because of the contact tracing and checking people's health status, they've actually found, the Chinese police have found a lot of Vietnamese victims of trafficking and returned them to Vietnam. So we're receiving, at the moment, we're not doing so many rescues directly ourselves, but we're receiving a lot of victims handed over by the Chinese side. And then we support them to get back across the border, because usually they don't have any paperwork. And then we're also helping with their reintegration. So it's wonderful that these women are able to come home. But the problem with that is that they're facing, many of them have been in China for a lot longer than other victims. So many of these women were, have been in China for years. And in fact, we recently received a woman back who has been in China. She was trafficked when she was 12, and she's been in China for 23 years. So her family had given up on her. They've been praying for her. They've been recognizing that her, praying at her altar because they believe she was dead. And suddenly she's turned up again, which is just amazing. But as you can imagine, the trauma that she's experienced, her Vietnamese is even quite poor now because she hasn't spoken it for 23 years. So she really will require a lot of services there.
Caitlin, I'm sorry, could you speak a little bit to the rehab services? There's a couple questions up on the screen. That's one that we have.
Yeah. So we have a team of social workers and psychologists that are specifically trained and experienced in providing rehabilitation services for female survivors of sex trafficking. So they provide, we provide an individualized service, so it really depends on what each individual survivor needs. So when the girls first come back, we do, the social workers and psychologists meet with her and do an assessment, an initial assessment to see what the situation is. And some women don't want ongoing support or don't need ongoing support. Maybe they haven't experienced a lot of trauma, or they don't want, they're not ready at that time. So some go home, and many women who are trafficked actually are already married in Vietnam and may have children back here. So they're happy to just go home. And in those cases, we keep in touch with the woman with her permission, but we're led by her needs and by her desires. But then for other women, they do want support and they do need ongoing support. So we provide whatever they need, and that may involve accommodation in our shelters in Hanoi. For many women, they're from very remote ethnic minority areas, and there aren't good schooling or training opportunities at home. So it's better that they stay with us for some time and access vocational training or schooling. We support girls and women to go back to school, to go to vocational training. We help them get jobs. We provide healthcare. Obviously, that's very important for many women. And yeah, it's really an individual service, and we provide that and for as long as needed, and until the woman can be independent, until she no longer needs that support. So we gradually help women to rebuild their lives so they can live independently again.
Michael, there's a question for you, and I want to wrap it around a bigger question yet, which is around preventative services overall. But your friends Elaine and Bruce are asking about what you're doing in training and sensitivity around trafficking during the pandemic and with police.
Sure. Well, hello, Bruce and Elaine. Thanks for that question. Yeah, during the lockdown period itself, we weren't able to continue any of our work directly with the government. They were really fully focused on dealing with the coronavirus. But before that, and now it's starting up again, that training with police, with border guards, even with the judiciary, and local communities, schools, all of that's really important in trying to build up the country's defences against human trafficking. It's quite difficult. A lot of people will say, well, why don't we do more awareness raising? One challenge with this kind of trafficking is that as the traffickers build a relationship and then deceive their victim. So awareness of trafficking isn't very helpful, because the victim thinks that they're just going somewhere with a friend or they're going for a job. So what we find is effective is building up the ability, the knowledge, the skills, the sensitivity of people who can stop this and intervene if they see it happening. And so that's especially the police and border guards. But schools have a role, community leaders have a role, the women's union has a role. So we do a lot of different kinds of training for those different groups. Very important. And then added on top of that is law reform projects that we get involved in to try to strengthen the law based on what we've learned. So that's say that.
Sorry, Michael. I wanted to mention Linda Byrne. The CEF has done some training with Blue Dragon, and if you take your mute off, you might just speak for a moment about how that's helped your staff with awareness, because I think that's really interesting, and it shows a lot of the kind of cross mix of learning and training that we have among our various partners across the world, really. Hello.
Well, I'm back. We're very grateful. We've had training every couple of years from Blue Dragon on human trafficking, and also on other subjects related to it. So this we feel is really important for our staff to really understand thoroughly, so they can talk to our students and the students' families about this, and also talk at schools as well. We work with our scholarship program. We work with a school that is an ethnic minority school up in Phukson near the Laos border. And no one says that girls have been trafficked, but girls go missing and they don't know where they are. So we're assuming they are being trafficked, but we don't know for sure. But we feel it's very important to educate them. And then we do talks in Hoi An sometimes for expats, just to raise their awareness, because trafficking isn't just amongst the ethnic. One of our girls a few years ago, as Michael knows because I was in touch with him, she was trafficked into prostitution up in the mountains. So just, she's just from a normal suburban area just outside of Hoi An. So trafficking is taking place everywhere. So it's very important that our staff understand the subject as well as possible. And Blue Dragon is, they've got the experience, they've got the knowledge, and their teachers are excellent. So that's something we've been doing and continue to do, and we're very grateful for.
Thanks.
That's great. Thanks, Linda.
Thanks, Linda.
Yeah. Michael, Linda, Caitlin, anything else you want to add before we move to Leah? I want to give you another few minutes if there's anything else you want to talk about related to the services or what's going on in this area. It's amazing.
Yeah, I guess what the final thing I'll mention is because we've been talking about the importance of schools and the role of schools. Because the schools were closed so long, we were very concerned that many poor families and ethnic minority kids in particular wouldn't go back to school because of the long break, and also because of the economic impacts on their families. And unfortunately, we've been shown to be right. In the two provinces where we are working, the schools went back at the beginning of May, but we worked with the schools and identified that over 400 kids didn't actually go back to school. That was close to 10% of the kids, which is really high. So what we're doing now is we're working with the schools and the teachers so that they can visit every family where the child hasn't come back to school and find out what's going on. And so as Linda said, the families don't necessarily know all the time. They might know their kid's gone missing, or they may think, yeah, my kid, they had to go to China to find work because we don't have enough food, or, unfortunately, a lot of the young women have gone to get married, underage marriage. which is a traditional, it's quite common in many ethnic minority groups, but it becomes more common at times of economic difficulty. So that's one area where we're really focused now, and that's kind of part of our, you know, it's sort of emergency, but it's also part of our rebuilding for the future. You know, we know that keeping kids in school is the best way to protect them from trafficking and exploitation. So we're very focused on helping the schools to do that and make sure that these kids can go back and be safe. If there is a suspicion that they've been trafficked or even that they've gone into an early marriage, we can work with the local authorities to report that, and so that they can investigate and quickly intervene. So hopefully many of these kids we will be able to get back, and they'll be able to go back to school. In fact, many already have. We've found a lot of them already, and they've gone back, but we're still working on that. Yeah.
Good. Thanks, Caitlin. That's really interesting, and it's very sad about all the girls who have not gone back to school and just the worries of being at home and some things that can happen or whatever. I think we'll move on to Liat, and we still have time for questions. So we have a star-studded cast from the Liat crew. We have, if you want to turn on your cameras, guys, we have Somsak, who's a community manager of Liat, which is a school in Luang Prabang. I'm talking about the Lao Educational Opportunity Trust now. We also have Sai Phomashit, who is in Luang Prabang as well. Hi, Sai. Hi, Miao. And Sai is an English teacher at Liat. Teng, I don't know if Teng was able to get, are you on, Teng? Okay, well, Teng Vongsonephet is a Homeland Director, and he's in Vientiane. He was going to talk a bit about the broader issues in Laos, but I'm not sure he's getting sound for some reason. And finally, we have...
I couldn't hear you now.
Ah, good. Hi, Teng. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Hi. And then we have Peter Banwell, who's the trustee of Liat. He's in the United Kingdom right now, and it's 1:30 in the morning for him, and morning for the guys as well, but not 1:30 anyway. And Peter is a trustee at Liat and one of the GoPhil board members. So welcome very much. I just want to say a word about Liat. We've been a partner of theirs for some years now, and they really support education for local students to be able to overcome issues of poverty and to succeed. They started in 2006, and as I said, we've partnered with them since 2011. I don't think I said that. They have a school that teaches English, been there many times, a scholarship and sponsorship program for university students and some of the students at the Liat school, a community projects program, which Niall will talk about in a moment, which is around building schools in very, very remote parts of Laos, and a vocational program, a newer program around sewing. So Peter, I don't know where you want to start, maybe with Teng, since he's hearing us, if you could talk a little bit kind of over what's happening in Laos overall, and then we'll go more specifically to Liat and schools and the village work, if that's okay.
Okay. Thank you, Linda, and for giving opportunity for us to speak up about what happened about COVID in Laos. As you know that Laos starting to lock down the country since the late of March 2020. And then until now, we already have 3 action plans that have been done. The latest one, we extend the pandemic control until the end of June. So right now, we still are in the control, but situation is relaxed now because as you follow the news, totally of the victim, not the patient of the COVID-19 in Laos, we have only 19 people, but so far we can heal about 18 people. So that means only 1 person that left in the hospital. So we expect that by next week, maybe no COVID-19 in patient in Laos. Even the situation in Laos is really relaxed now, but as you know that the nearby countries still have very serious situations, and many countries still in the control. The overall, in terms of traveling, still have very strong restrictions for the people entering to the country. only the pre-visa tourists or the expertise from organization allowed to come to the country. Normal people will not allowed to travel to other country or even get into the country. So that means it's quite hard for people from other country to really access to the to Laos PDR at the moment. We also have relaxed traveling within the country right now because everyone can travel to the province now. Starting since June 2nd, right now people can start to go to work. Every organization right now have relaxed, many policy have been relaxed, and restaurants have been open. Many tourist sites still have restriction, particularly related to the place that still have potential to expand the pandemic, the COVID-19. At the moment, government tried to put the bigger awareness listing for the people, but somehow the concern is about people come from other country because Lao laborers move from Thailand is quite big number, particularly in southern part of Laos. At the moment, I think it's close to 300,000 people that's come from Thailand. So that is big concern at the moment. However, the test and the monitoring still could not find any single person from Thailand. I mentioned is about the labor that test positive to the COVID-19. The 19 people that have been test positive to the COVID-19 is not the labor that work in Thailand, but traveler or the person who go to work in other area. So this is, you can see that how the government also control quite seriously. And with that, we also see a lot of support from many organizations and also nearby country in how can help the government of Laos to control the COVID-19. So in sum, I would say that right now Laos, compared to other countries, it's very good control and seem to relax compared to like Thailand or even Singapore. So, but somehow we cannot put our at least. So government still would like to make sure that everyone in practice the new normal. If you go out to the outside, you still request to wear your face mask and make sure that your hand is clean. So this is very important. And another important update is about the schooling. It's now open for everyone can go back to school. Laos also start our class on June 2nd. So that means the government allow, but the school need to have very strong distancing policy. So that means every classroom make sure that you have 1 meter far from each other. But as you know that in the public school, it's very crowded classroom. It may be up to 30 to 40 people in that classroom. So the public schools still need to make sure that the distancing is very seriously practiced in the government school.
And
yes,
I think that's a good framework. I want to make sure Niao and Sai get a moment to talk about some of the LIAT programs. Is there anything else that's kind of the big picture before we have them speak a few moments too?
Okay, so yeah, and in some for the schooling that leaded to school, the government also starting to have the timeline that by the mid of July they will have the final test. So maybe we ought also connect to that. So hand over to Peter to continue.
Okay, great. I want to comment too that Teng is a voice of the people in Laos and quite a social media guru there. So everyone looks up to him and knows that he has all the inside information on all of this. So thank you, Teng, for joining us. Well, maybe, Sai, do you want to talk a bit about the school? Liat says it just opened, I think, yesterday, and then Sai or Yao could go on and talk about the village work, if that's okay. So Sai, what tell us about Liat?
Hello again. So my name is Sai and Mr. Bouniew. So we're here to tell you about Liat School. Liat School will reopen the 2nd of June and we have the 7 beginner and 5 elementary. So we teach 2 levels at the moment, and number of students is more and more because we closed for a few months. The students return to their hometown, and now they just come back. So from the high school, they start for final year. They start 18th of May for final year, and another year they start the 2nd of June. But for the university, they start the 15th of June. So it's difficult for your students because some of them they study at university or colleges. So they come here only high school, and the few students come. And we also contact them by phone, or WhatsApp, or Facebook, or email. They said they're coming soon. And the number of Liot students more and more. And we also separate the chair. Also, we divide chair to about matter. And also, we also give them a mask to wear and spray for clean hand, and also we take the temperature before they get into school.
Are you teaching your English and your
It's hard for the scholarship student. Now, scholarship student, we have, this year we have 26 students, and they are going to finish about 12 students. So with the training, it's hard for them to write a report because they stopped for the COVID-19. So now they still on the writing their report to send their teacher.
So I was asking, are you teaching English and computer classes both right now? You're teaching English and computer both?
At the moment, we do only English first because the computer is hard for them.
Okay, and your student population is less because of COVID and what's going on. Meow, do you want to speak some about the wonderful work you're doing out in these outlying villages with building schools and sanitation, all that kind of thing? It's wonderful.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Linda. All right. Okay, I would like to do the brief report that I have done for this year. Okay. We built 2 schools and the 1 repairing. And we keep the food to the Lao labor from Thailand. And now we plan to provide the temperature to those, because a lot the school in Laos, they don't have the thermometer to check the student. Like every public school, they have clouded students, and they need help for the thermometer. Okay, this year we plan to build more, 2 more schools if we have support. And okay, in the building site, yes, at the moment it's rain. It's rain sometimes, but not so much. We have problem with this last year already. This year we don't have enough rain, and a lot of the villages have problem with the water. Some villages they don't have water in the village. And
now about
we have help from.
Are you going to talk about the work you've done with the grant from GoPhil to provide the food and essential supplies for those returned from Thailand?
Okay, yeah, we have support from GoPhil to give the food to the Lao labor from Thailand. And also we have support from GoPhil to do the sewing school, and also rebuild the school in rural area.
Good, thanks. Peter, we're going to be out of time in about 5 minutes, but do you have anything you want to wrap some of this up related to Liat? Is there anything you want to
just quickly, if I may.
Sure.
The majority of our students come from the countryside. We've only been open 2 days since about a 2.5 month closed down, and to date about 1/3 of our students have returned. We would expect more to come, which will be university students, and we'll continue to advertise on Facebook and phone to encourage more to come back. I think given the circumstances, normally our classes would finish about now, and many of our students would expect to go home because they would be helping with the rice harvest and helping their families in the village. So in many ways, the year is very upside down. Certainly, we're concerned at the moment that our vocational sewing school cannot open because it's on the same site that the refugees come back and are in isolation. So we're hoping that in the next week or 10 days that the students from that area will come back and that we'll be able to allow all our students to finish their studies. The reason we haven't started the computer studies so far is we have to sanitize the equipment, and one of the difficulties is every time a student uses the computer, then it has to be cleaned before anybody else can use it. It also means currently we can't use our library for the same reason, because we've got a difficulty in keeping the books clean. And at the present moment, our bicycles we loan students are waiting to go back out to them. I would like to put a special mention about my colleague Teng. My other 2 colleagues are employees, whereas Teng has been a volunteer since Leo actually started, I think, Teng. 2006 you volunteered as a very young man, and although he lives in the capital, he's absolutely essential to all the work we do. He comes regularly up to Thalavanh where we're based, and he does all the work in liaison because typically as a foreign NGO, there's lots of regulations, and he works with the Department of Education and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for maintaining our licenses and our authorities. So quite a challenging job, and without him, we certainly could not have continued to work. So a big thank to him. So, and also to GoPhil. GoPhil's given us exceptional support, really. And not just money, mentoring as well, support, bringing travellers to see us. And that's great benefit. Travellers come in, give us extra opportunity to see what we do at school. But it also gives us the opportunity for our students to meet with the people who are some of our sponsors as well. So I'll round up just at that, so if there's time for questions.
Thanks, Peter. I don't see any questions up yet, but please pose them. We have a few more moments if you like. I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to thank Travis for organizing all this, and for our wonderful speakers who are doing the really hard lifting, heavy lifting out in the field. We appreciate that so much. I want to say a word about our Rapid Response Fund. I just want to say that we understand everyone's in a different circumstance, and we respect that and appreciate it. That if you would like to share this information you've learned this evening or this morning, as the case may be, with your friends and colleagues, or are so moved to support the Rapid Response Fund, we'd be thrilled, because we know there's more than the immediate need we're talking about. All these 3 programs have talked about food, the basic need of food, and that's the real emergency right now. But longer term, there are issues around the stability of the organizations and the communities they support in the economic sense, just as there is in many other countries like the United States. So just wanted to say we appreciate your support in that area. And let's have a few minutes for our speakers to have any last words that you may want to share with the group. We'd love to hear from you. Don't be shy.
We won't be shy. Thanks. Look, thanks for this opportunity. And I imagine for the other charities who are on the call, it may be a little bit the same, that we hear from you regularly from the GoPhil team. But we don't often get a real opportunity to say thank you to you all, or especially to those who are donating and sending that money. That Rapid Response Fund has been such a big help in this time. So thank you to you, GoPhil, and also to the supporters who are on the line. It's very much appreciated.
Thanks, Michael. Anything else? All right, then. I don't see any more questions, but if some come up, please send them along. We'll make sure that we'll get answers for you. And again, we so appreciate your taking time, especially in this very challenging time that we're in. So thank you for joining us, and everyone stay safe and well. If you want to turn your cameras back on, it'd be lovely to see you all and wave.
Thank you very much for this, Linda.
Good, good.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you.
I could go to sleep now. It's very late.
It's 2:30 your time in the morning. Yeah, we know.
Soon be time to get up.
We have a call. We have a board call. So
Coffee time.
Yeah, that's right.
say hi to
I
my
have coffee.
family. I see my grandkids and my son on this screen, so that's pretty
Yo,
cool.
yo, nice job.
Thanks.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, all of you.
Thanks all.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Have a good time there. Cheers.
Cheers. Toodaloo.
Toodaloo. Toodle pip.
See you, Linda.